Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and it's time for another week in review. What happened last week, a drop about what's coming up, and all of that stuff. And to begin off, last week we had a small week, short week. We're actually starting to calm down a bit, slowly. And last week was 2 reviews we had, or I guess technically it's more than that. It was GPS, Sequoia, and Mountain Goats all together in one video that I did with my daughter. Short version of those 3 games is I think they are great, lightweight games. They're not like they're not winning any awards for me. They're solid games that I enjoyed playing that will stick around because they are easy to teach and accessible. None of them do I really think are amazing. I just think that they're solid, enjoyable games with a small footprint, and to that end, they are currently staying in my collection as long as, well, my kids want to keep playing them. For myself, I think I prefer games like, I think Can't Stop is a little better, a little bit longer too, so it's hard to really compare that. Games like Colorado I like a lot, so lots of small box games out there. GPS, Sequoia, Mountain Goats, all solid, but also not amazingly memorable. Good games, not great, and I think I've said good games, not great like 4 times now. Moving on from there, we have Kingdom Rush. Kingdom Rush, which is still set up on my table that I am really enjoying. I've been playing this one both, I played it a bunch solo for myself, then I played it with my wife, so I have more of an experience. I played it with my daughter as well, so we had a 3-player game going on, and since then I've gone back to playing it solo to continue going through the campaign and finishing it off and all of that. I'm really enjoying this one, and I mean, I just filmed it recently in my top 10 games in 40 to 31, which we'll get to shortly. So Kingdom Rush, solid game, absolutely loving it. You can watch the full review for more of me effusively going on about how much I love it. Moving on from there, we had Sunday, where I did a BoardGameCo Reacts video. This was me, basically Jesse from Quackalope had put out a video about the concept of TTS, Tabletop Simulator, and online games, and whether it's good or bad for a publisher, and someone called my name on that video in the comments saying, hey, I wonder what Alex has to say about this. And so I figured, hey, I'll say something about it. It wasn't my favorite video because it was a lot of just reading comments, but it was an okay video, and basically just me talking about the basic short concept is I am of the opinion that Tabletop Simulator is a boon to publishers. Obviously, it is easier for me to say that because it's not my sales or my games that are being hit by people using Tabletop Simulator for free. That being said, I mean, it's hard to say. It's always hard to say what you would do if you were in someone else's footprints. For myself, I believe I would let Tabletop Simulator, spread and grow like wildfire to help promote a game, but it obviously is a harder call to make depending on, well, every game, every publisher, every situation. Moving on from there, we had Monday. Monday, we skipped a roundup because, again, Kickstarter's light, so we're alternating weeks. And Monday was my top 10 Kickstarter games, basically from 2020 specifically. So I went over my games, all the campaigns in 2020, including some that I did not back, and just what were my favorite ones. What did I like? What did I not like? Although I say top 10, I'm pretty sure it was like top 18, and really should be top 19 because I completely forgot to cover Planet Unknown in that one as well. I just managed to squeeze a lot of games in, lots of solid games that I am really looking forward to. 2020 was I was going to say a good year for Kickstarter, but depending on whether you're gauging it by the games or what your wallet looks like after you back everything, 2020 was a hard year for, by far, hands down, the most expensive Kickstarter year I've had by far, and that is because it's going to be partially because of the good games on Kickstarter, and partially because now that I'm doing this whole content creation thing, more Kickstarters catch my eye that I otherwise would have missed on, games that I would have just completely skipped and not been pulled in by because I'm spending more time doing deep dives into them. That's more time to get invested in wanting it and seeing how it plays out. And I still try to keep to my rules of trying to back games primarily that I think will hold their value, with the occasional exception. But nonetheless, holding their value or not, it's a lot of money tied up in board games. Moving on from there, we had Tuesday, where I covered a little bit of the same, but moving on, which are Kickstarter games worse than other games? And this was inspired to a degree by the fact that recently, and this is one of those things where some people who know about this are going to be like, of course we know about this, and other people have no idea what I'm talking about. But there was recent drama in the past month or so about, particularly Awakened Realms, but around Etherfields, with a lot of reviewers, shut up and sit down, and no pun included, so really 2 reviewers, so no pun intended, putting, no pun included, I think it's no pun included, they both put out negative reviews, very heavily negative reviews on Etherfields, calling it, horrible, a mess, not well done, this, that, and the other, and I don't even disagree with many of their critiques, to be clear, and I covered that in my own review when I did it, but it was this kind of attack on Etherfields, and to a certain extent, in Shut Up and Sit Down, it was an attack on the concept of Kickstarter in general, of how it's constantly a mess, constantly overproduced, unorganized, horrible rulebooks, and I don't even disagree. I think Kickstarter does deliver a lot of extra problems in the space that wouldn't be there in a retail game. I also think it delivers better games in general. On average, I think Kickstarter delivers better games. Messier games, yes. Rise of Moloch, I just covered this recently. I was talking about Rise of Moloch in one of my top 10 lists. And Rise of Moloch is a game that does come with a game that needed rules cleaned up, needed a lot of errata, a lot of FAQs, lots of that kind of stuff, and that's a common trend in Kickstarter games. Rise of Moloch is also one of my favorite games. It's a common thing to me that you get these messes that, I mean, Kingdom Rush has, like, basic rule mistakes that needed to be clarified, some basic things, inconsistency in the rulebooks. How do you even win a scenario is not 100% clear. You kind of read the rulebook, you get there, and then you have to look it up. And those things are problematic. But also, I love Kingdom Rush and have been playing it all the time compared to many of my other retail games that have a cleaner rulebook and aren't quite as compelling as some of my Kickstarter games. And so that was basically the topic of the video, just going into are Kickstarter games worse or not. My take on it, which you know by now because you're seeing this. But basically, I think Kickstarter games are messier and better in what they deliver. And so I'm a big fan of Kickstarter, obviously, and that was just my video on it. Moving on from there, we had Wednesday, where I did a first for me, and this is going to be partially inspired by Quackalope, because he has this big thing, which we've talked about over the years, of just do something. If you want to do something, just start. Just get it going, move on. And for the past 6 months now, I have been pushing off the idea of covering late pledges, because I just don't have a system for it. And I sat there and I was like, you know what? 2021's coming up. Let's try for a New Year's resolution. I'm always a fan of trying to add value to the channel, trying to do something new. I never want to be just doing the same thing for the next 10 years. I always want to be doing something better, different. And that, yes, that will include at some point, not yet, at some point that will include B-roll, editing, all that kind of stuff. And so for right now, I was like, you know what? Something new. I'm going to start doing Kickstarter late pledges. And I literally just spent the past 2 weeks just crawling through every resource I could, both my own lists of Kickstarter games, because now that I've been doing this coverage for a long time, I have an Excel sheet that I track all the Kickstarters so I can cover them. And so going through like literally hundreds of Kickstarters, pulling up every single campaign, reaching through every late pledge. I also use 2 resources that I linked to in that video, bglatepledge.com, I think it is. I think it's bglatepledge.com, as well as a geek list on BoardGameGeek. And so between those 3 things, my own database, so it's not database, my own Excel sheet, and those 2, I just crawled through every Kickstarter and just started putting down links, taking notes, and just putting in the legwork on something that will still be legwork moving forward, but will be less legwork now that I have the bulk set in there. And my plans are to do one of these late pledge videos. As of right now, I'm not entirely sure how often. I am aiming to do it somewhere between once a month or once every 2 months. It might be every 6 weeks. I don't know exactly. And it's going to be currently structured with all the new stuff first, so that we can avoid people having to watch an hour-long video that constantly covers the same thing. So I want to be informative without, you know, being useless to those who have watched the same video the past 6 times. So I haven't figured out exactly, but it's something that it was a well-received video overall. Definitely some feedback, which is helpful in guiding how to make it the most ideal for the most people. But I was very happy with how it did overall, and I'm happy I started it, and it will continue to be part of the channel moving forward, covering late pledges to a degree. Moving on from there, we have Thursday. Thursday was a video of my top 10. I've been doing my top 50 for 2020, my top 50 games of all time. And I did my top, I did 50 through 41 last week. And for this Thursday, I did 40 through 31. And in that video, I think the 2 new games to me, the 2 games that were new to 2020 games, were going to be Kingdom Rush and Dune Imperium. Those both made their way into my top 50. In general, I have no problem putting newer games into my top 50. There's more new games to come. For me, ultimately, the idea that a game will ricochet back and forth from year to year. So, for example, let's take Kingdom Rush as an example. Kingdom Rush was, I don't remember what it was, but let's say it was number, 34, whatever it was. If next year it drops drastically to 75, I'm okay with that. To me, a top 50 based on a year is how I feel about that game now. That may well drop over time, and I'll have stats and cover it and make sure that I'm seeing like, oh, this had a major drop and doing all that stuff. But I don't mind if a game has a temporary boost because the excitement and high of the game has me temporarily over whatever level or bar there is. I'm totally fine with that. Ultimately, this just represents how I feel about a game at the moment. But yeah, those would be the new games. Kingdom Rush, Dune Imperium. Past that, lots of old favorites. Rise of Moloch, which I just mentioned, was in that list as well, and I don't remember offhand what the rest was. From there we had Friday. Now keep in mind, I am filming this Thursday night, so Friday is tomorrow for me. Friday is yesterday for you. Friday, we had, past tense, a live Q&A with myself and Rina, my wife. It went amazing. You guys were so polite, so nice. The questions were particularly... I mean, some of those questions were on point. I wouldn't have thought of those questions myself. Obviously, I'm talking about this. It has not happened yet to me, so hopefully it did go well and not horrible and didn't get cancelled or who knows what. But Friday, live Q&A with my wife. That totally went well. From there, we have Saturday, which is this video now at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then coming up later today, we're going to have a review of Cyclades. I always say, and I do this even in the review, I go back and forth. Is it Cyclades or Cyclades? I've said both, and I can't remember which one is correct, so in my review I made sure to pronounce it both ways so that I'm both right and wrong. I say made sure, what I really mean is constantly forgot what I was doing. So Cyclades is, in my review, coming at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. This is the start of me starting to put out reviews of older games, of games that have been in my collection for quite some time. It's one of those things that, as I've been putting together this top 50, I have started to realize many of my favorite games haven't been reviewed by me. Which is a shame, because if I love a game that much, why am I not putting out a review somewhere on the channel so someone can get the full picture of how I feel about it? If I talk about a game, my top 10 or whatever it is, I would ideally like all of my top 10s to have their own dedicated review, and over the next year, I will slowly be playing catch up on that. And so, for instance, Cyclades is this week. Next week is probably going to be Innis. I'll have to double check. I'm giving my patrons a choice of, you know, various games they can pick from, and then I'll just review them in the order that they pick them. And Cyclades was first. I believe Innis is currently winning the latest poll. Link to my Patreon down below if you want to jump in there. But yeah, I'll be starting to do reviews of all my older games. And then coming up at 2 o'clock, I think, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, there'll be a review for Quad Heroes. Quad Heroes is a Quad Heroes is a game that I'm reviewing, and it'll be going up at 2 o'clock, and they have a upcoming Kickstarter coming at some point soon. I don't believe a date is locked in, but some point in the next, let's just call it the next half year, but I think it's sooner than that. So Quad Heroes will be having a Kickstarter coming. Keep your eyes peeled for that, and we'll see how that plays out. Fun fact, by the way, related, and we'll explain why later, but also Velocity Vanguard is a Kickstarter that I covered briefly that I have now had the opportunity to play. It did not fully fund, and it will be relaunching later this year, at some point in 2021, and it is one that I am actually really excited about having played it, because... well, I mean, spoiler alert, but I really enjoyed my play. I'll have my whole liked, didn't like, and all that when I eventually do a review of it. I believe I'm getting a prototype review, no guarantees. But Velocity Vanguard, solid game. Keep your eyes peeled for that one. I really hope it funds this time because I genuinely want that game. So that's that. Coming up next week, as far as past today. And coming up next week is not something I always do. It's just sometimes, if I have something that's worth mentioning, I'll mention what's coming up. So first of all, Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I have a live Q&A with Jesse from Quackalope. We are covering any number of things, basically whatever you want to ask, but we are going to be also making it very clear that any ISS Vanguard questions about how we really felt, in case anything you want to know, basically. I've had a lot of questions about ISS Vanguard in particular, and sometimes the direct live communication gives you more room for a real conversation where you can say, but those dice, how did you feel about the dice? And we can actually answer properly instead of having to put a comment that one person sees and no one else does. So it will be ISS Vanguard, not focused, but I guess maybe focused, half focused, but you can ask whatever you want. Ask me what my favorite type or color of chipmunk is. I don't know. I literally just made that question up right now. And then later this week, and this is a one that I'm excited for, and I'm biased, but coming up Wednesday, I believe Wednesday, I have a video I did with my wife, Rina's most played games of 2020, and the week after I'll have one for me as well. But it was a ton of fun for me. As the person in the video, I had a lot of fun. Hopefully it is just as fun for you, but basically we turned it into a game. We sat there and I pulled up my app, and she had to guess her top 10 games or whatever it is, our most played games. We did it back and forth. I particularly enjoyed it. Hopefully it's as enjoyable for you, but keep your eyes peeled for that one. It was a lot of fun to do. That is everything. That's the roundup. That's the weekend review and tease at what's coming up. Oh yeah, also, I mentioned I'm doing a live Q&A with Jesse. That's going to be because I'm traveling down to him again, so we can do a whole bunch of videos together, including Primal, including Candy Wars, a bunch of games we're going to be covering and stuff, you know, for channels and things and Kickstarter and fun times, all that kind of stuff. And that's basically everything. That's going to be the weekend review. Keep your eyes peeled later today for Cyclades and Quad Heroes. And past that, and as always, have a good one.